The Forum at 8 on SAfm.
8 minutes past 8. The Forum this morning, 1 year on. What has changed for those affected by the Marikana tragedy? This is the question we are asking today. Of course, this Friday marking the first anniversary of that tragedy, which took place on the 16th of August last year. Commemoration will take place at the Kopi or Hillcock, where the majority of the 34 platinum miners were shot dead. The miners died during an unprotected strike for monthly salary increases of up to 12,500 rand at Lonmin Mines' Rustenburg operations in Marikana in the Northwest Province. Events are generally acknowledged as the worst example of public order policing in democratic South Africa, and are all in agreement, as in the observers, that this tragedy is one that should never be repeated. So what are your thoughts on this? 1 year on, what has changed for those affected by the Marikana tragedy? Perhaps you are a resident of some of the informal settlements of Marikana, or perhaps just being in the Northwest Province, you're familiar with some of the more intimate details that we as the outsiders don't have. Send us SMS 34701, 34701. But we're in conversation today with Mr. A.B. Makwe, SABC's political editor. He's in the studio with us, as well as with us is Lucas Letwaba, who is an author of the book We Are Going to Kill Each Other Today, The Marikana Story. Joining us on the line is Anglican Bishop Joe Sioka, who is from the South African Council of Churches, as well as Dr. Fanie du Toit, Executive Director at the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you all and welcome. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
Perhaps,
and thank you for having us.
Perhaps we should just start with a bit of background. As we mentioned, miners at Lonmin Mine in the Northwest are saddened that they mark the first anniversary of the killings, with their battle for 12,500 rand still not realized. Our senior political reporter, Mahlatse Gallants, compiled this report.
What I remember is that we just heard the sound, an unusual sound. You must understand that we are living in a mine area, so we are used on sounds, like when they blast underground, but that sound on that day was different. That sound was sounds of guns that was refusing to stop.
A sound urged in memory, and in its wake a trail of broken families. They are desperately searching for justice, erstwhile comrades turning against one another, leaving a community divided and a trail of deaths. Pastor Sakumzi Qaqimana has been living in Marikana for 7 years.
The first year when I arrived here, this community was a peaceful community, and then there was hope because there was a mine. So each and everybody was like, were many on my first day that were new here because of there is a potential of people getting jobs, so they were flooding and then coming in, and then there was hope. There was that sense that you could feel that these people are positive.
That hope was dashed last year when miners went on strike demanding a salary increase from 4,000 to 12,000 rand a month. In days leading to August 16th, 10 people, including policemen and security guards, were brutally murdered. Then things came to a head.
When police started firing bullets, it was like my brain stopped working. The gunshots were ringing non-stop. I went down, my ears were blocked. It was a lot of guns. That is what has affected me.
Bangele Mpoche still cannot believe he survived. Lifting his shirt, he reveals the numerous scars from rubber bullets and gunshots. He says at the time they felt trapped as police had erected barbed wire around the Kopi.
Every time I watch it on TV, I say I survived. My brothers died. Because we are not going to fight the police, we are just trying to go to our homes.
Pastor Sakumzi Qaqimana says Marikana has been at war since. The community is yet to heal, remains angry, and its future uncertain. Not only miners, but pastors and other people have fallen victim. He says the area needs a peace force. He warns of a new danger. Community taking the law into their own hands with 2 teenagers already killed.
community now is starting to kill one of their own because there is no arrest that are happening. There is nothing that is happening with persecuting those that are the creators of violence in the community.
Would you say it's a community at war?
I'm telling you, yeah, it's a community at war now. Because now they're going to get tired with what is happening. And then once the community is tired, so the violence will escalate.
It's one of the local community pastors speaking there to our senior political reporter, Mahlatse Gallants. 1 year on, what has changed for those affected by the Marikana tragedy? Well, let me start by asking our Anglican Bishop Joe Sioka. Perhaps let's just start with the commemorations. There's been a great deal of controversy about the commemoration, who's going to attend, who has been invited, who has not been invited. Is this the way to observe the commemoration of this day?
Good morning, and thank you for having me. Look, what is happening is uncalled for. The 3 persons that were asked by the workers to organize this day, and also through the government instigation, to have the churches, the religious community in the forefront of organization, have nothing to do with union rivalry or political affiliation. All what we have really done is to open the space for everybody, irrespective of ideology, irrespective of political affiliation, irrespective of union membership, to come to the copy and pay tribute to the fallen heroes. And so those that are not able to come because they feel comfortable with the way and the people who have been organizing this event is really unfortunate. And we are appealing that everybody, whether you belong to a union that is not in majority, the union that is in majority, or non-unionized members, churches, political parties, everybody, because this tragedy did affect every citizen of this country.
But precisely that, Bishop, because, I mean, we spoke to the National Union of Mineworkers earlier on, and one of the things that they were saying that to their mind, they understood that government was at the forefront of this. And the question I want to know now, to ask now from you, is whether or not government or any state representative will be present. And the fact that this commemoration has been hijacked, as they say, by the Marikana support group.
Look, I'm not sure whether the Marikana support group has actually hijacked this. I am not at Marikana right now, but I'll be going there. My understanding is that Advocate Dalimpofu, myself, and other people will be handling the program, and it will be inclusive. Nobody is going to be left out who wishes to speak or pay tribute. The members of families are important. The workers are important. The orphans are important. So it's a very inclusive day, really.
Will government members or representatives be present, Bishop?
We have not heard who is going to represent who, but the invitation was open to everybody.
Okay. Allow me then to bring in...
There has been discussions with the Deputy President, and unfortunately he personally would not be able to come. The reason being they have Lehota this weekend.
Allow me then to bring in our political editor here at the SABC, A.B. Makwe. This, I don't know if to call it a mess, but what we're seeing now, the arguments over the commemoration itself, does it belie what some have said has been contestation, political power, or even power play that led to the Marikana tragedy in the beginning?
Thank you, Tsepisa. I think basically what we are seeing happening right now is almost exactly where we were a year ago. The deep divisions, the intra-union rivalry, the mistrust between the mining community, the miners themselves, the security forces, the police, if you like. And now that AMCU also has kind of become officially, if you like, the dominant force and factor in that community of Marikana, in the mines in Marikana, you now have, on the other hand, the division, the schism between AMCU and NUM playing themselves outside of the mine shafts into the communities, into the streets. And this is why I'm saying today we are marking the first year since that fateful day, and the same old issues are still to the fore.
You speak
divisions.
about the community of Marikana, and you also speak about AMCU, which is obviously the majority union now that represents workers at Lonmin. And the question I have been asking is, can we separate the Lonmin mine from the community, the residents of the informal settlements of Ikaning and Wonderkoop?
Absolutely impossible. Tapisa grew up in Rustenburg, in the mining villages there. I understand fully well what happens. You are a miner in the mine shaft. You are a miner when you walk outside of that mine. You live on the doorstep of those shafts. Everything that you do, whether you go to the Shebeen, you are talking work, and work means mines, means the politics, means the joys, the ups and downs of mining life. And therefore, it is absolutely impossible to separate life inside the mine shaft and life where these miners sleep.
So that means the rivalry inside or underground then spills over to the community, affecting family members as well.
There's no disjuncture. It's with them all the way through, and that's the reality of their life, and that's why the differences from inside the mines are manifested even in as recent as the past week, with the killings in either Shebeen, a tavern, or in the streets. And this is because this is such an enclosed community. They live where they work.
We're going to continue our conversation, so I'm going to come back to you, Dr. Du Toit, to tell us why you were saying that what really led to the Marikana tragedy is poor leadership, poor policing, how this day occurred on a day when there was supposed to be consensus building and a shared vision. And we'll also hear from the author of the book, We're Going to Kill Each Other Today, the Marikana story. That's Lucas Letwaba. But let's take a quick break and we'll return. You can also give us a call, if possible, hopefully from people who live in Marikana, who can share their stories with us. What is it like being in that place today? What does this day mean to you? 0891 104 208 34701. That's our SMS hotline. 2 rand.
Join me, Hilton Tarrant, every weeknight at 6 for the SAfm Market Update with MoneyWeb, with breaking business news, expert analysis, investment insights, and the story behind the story. We're helping you make sense of the markets and your money. That's the Market Update, weeknights right here on SAfm at 6.
When the swing of jazz meets the swing of golf, you are invited to be a part of the 4th annual Standard Bank Joy of Jazz Golf Day on the 20th of August 2013 at the prestigious Ranch Park Golf Course. Entertainment by the internationally acclaimed jazz singer Renee Murray. For golf packages, email Kidi at k-wave.co.za or call 072 338 2432. Joy of Jazz Golf Day, supported by SAfm, South Africa's news and information leader.
The Forum at 8 on SAfm.
So we pick up where we left off 1 year on what has changed for those affected by the Marikana tragedy. And we're in conversation with the SABC's political editor, A.B. Makwe, Anglican Bishop Joe Sioka, who is with the South African Council of Churches, Dr. Fanie du Toit, an Executive Director at the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, as well as Lucas Letwaba, who is the author of the book, We're Going to Kill Each Other Today. So what is your view, Dr. Du Toit, what we're seeing now, what's playing itself out, and what happened on that day? Has it just really been a continuous thread that informs what is going on today. We're talking about how there are even tensions and ructions over the commemoration, a day that's supposed to honor the lives of those who died as a result of this tragedy.
Well, I find it absolutely extraordinary that a year on, it seems that so few lessons have been learned, that our politics are so immature at this point, that we cannot come together and have a unified commemoration of those people who died. It is absolutely extraordinary. And it shows to what extent people are prepared to play petty politics at the cost of ordinary people, because it's the ordinary people, I think, that the day is meant to focus on. Not only those who died, but those who remained behind. And I had the privilege this week to see with my own eyes what is happening there and what's not happening there. And very, very little has been done to alleviate the plight of the victims. Almost nothing, in fact, has been done.
Who should take responsibility for that?
Well, I think that Lonmin should and could have done more, quite frankly, to alleviate the plight of the victims. Things like half-built homes of deceased miners, breadwinners, the salaries that's been lost. Just a simple request to return to the Eastern Cape of a widow who wants to go back to where she came from before they were recruited. Those sorts of requests, are reasonable. And there was also a promise made to the victims that for every job lost, they would receive a job in the family. So it may not be the same job, but something in the company for the widow. That has not been addressed. So there's a lot. And, justice deferred is justice denied. And 1 year on, very little has changed for these people.
Your view, Dr. Du Toit, of the fact that Lonmin now says to the workers that if you want to attend the commemorations, that's no problem, but just remember that the principle of no work, no pay applies.
Yeah, I think that's also insensitive, quite frankly. I think that, this is a day that people should be humble about. This was an extraordinary failure on the part of I think, management, part of the unions, on the part of policing, and we should all take our lessons from this day and to insist that people cannot attend this commemoration without taking a cut in their pay. That's just unacceptable.
That's just a reminder of scenes on this day. Lucas Ledwaba has written about it. We're going to kill each other today. Is it as base as that, Lucas? Did people just really go out intentionally to do harm to each other?
Thank you. I don't think we should look at what happened in Marikana in isolation of the conditions that exist there or that existed there before the shooting. Mm-hmm. Maybe let me give you an example. In the 1930s or early 1940s, Walter Sisulu, the former ANC stalwart, made a trip from the Eastern Cape to work on the mines in Johannesburg. The conditions, terrible. The pay, very, very low. 2009, 2008, another young man from Kanduli in the Eastern Cape makes the same trip. Nothing has changed. Same conditions, same, poor pay for workers on the mines. So I think the mining community has been ignored for a very long time. We might have achieved our freedom in 1994. But on the mines, the situation has remained the same.
A powder keg that was always ready to be lit.
Yeah, so there has been a build-up. If you go back to around 1997, there was a strike at Impala. People were killed. People, they were not killed by the police at the time, but a lot of people were killed. There has been a series of strikes. It's been building up. So what happened last year was a build-up of things that have not been attended to over a period of time.
Lucas, we're going to come back to that and go deeper into that issue. I just want to take Mike Dotta's call from the Northwest Province. He's been holding on for quite a while, and we also have to release the Bishop. Mike Dotta, a very good morning to you. You say things are still the same.
things are still the same. But let me raise three things. One, in the morning, someone from the commission, Desai, is saying he's shocked about NM decision not to attend. But the same Desai was never shocked about AMCU not signing the peace accord that was negotiated by the deputy president. The second thing, the bishop, the honorary bishop there, when an shop steward was killed, you know what he said? He said that he was not sure if that shop steward was killed by those striking mine workers. The last thing is that each time there's a killing, the police and the justice department are not acting, and that on its own is sliding towards anarchy, where people think that they have the right to kill others. Mine workers have the right to life too. Mine workers have the right not to be recruited to a barrel of a gun. This has never been the centrality of everybody who's focusing in Marikana.
All right, thank you so much, Matota. That's something that we're certainly going to look at in just a moment. Bishop, do you have anything to say to that Matota statements, and perhaps just your final word on what we should be doing on this day to change the course of history?
Yeah, Tabitha, thank you very much. I'm personally sorry that this whole thing has turned into a political battle. I think it is regrettable. Today's event is to commemorate the fallen people on the 16th, 2012, and therefore we appeal that it must be an opportunity to unify, opportunity to build peace, an opportunity for reconciliation, restoration, and of course the healing of the wounds and trauma that people are going through. That's my appeal for today.
All right, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. That is Anglican Bishop Joe Sioka from the South African Council of Churches. He's also one of the organizers of the commemorations today, along with Advocate Dalim Pofu, who is representing the mine workers and those injured, their family members, as well as the Association of Mine Workers Construction, AMCU, that is also spearheading those commemorations. Well, obviously there can't be celebrations, but the event itself. But we'll be taking more calls, 0891 104 208, as well as SMSs 34701. It's a little after 8:30. An update of your news headlines now with Vabakshni Chetty.
The Forum at 8 on SAfm.
Well, we continue with our discussion. The question we're asking, 1 year on, what has changed for those affected by the Marikana tragedy? You can join in on the conversation, 0891 104 208. You can also send us SMS on 34701, 34701, R2 per SMS, and we are available on email if you'd like to chat to us as well. AM Live at sabc.co.za or our Twitter handle at AM Live on SAfm. Well, let's continue with the conversation. I'd like to just come back to you, Lucas Lutwaba, as I mentioned earlier on, is the author of the book, We're Going to Kill Each Other Today. You were saying the situation has been building on over the years, and you were speaking about the mining community or environment, how that has been pretty much the same from the apartheid era. So let's look into the community life then of the Marikana community. AB spoke about it earlier on, but what are the current social conditions, and for people moving from the Eastern Cape to here?
Yeah, look, what you find there is that people, instead of living in the hostel, choose to move out and erect shacks next to their place of employment, because by so doing they earn a little bit more money that they can send home to families and sustain themselves while they're here. Now that creates a problem, because those areas, first of all, are not planned. There is no infrastructure. I'll give you an example. Last year, when we covered the strike, around Nkaning, there's an open area, there's some bushes there. You would see lots of toilet paper next to small trees, small thorn trees. And when we inquired about this, it we then realized that because people do not have toilets, they relieve themselves in the bush. People do not have running water. People do not have electricity. So that in itself creates problems when it comes to policing, knowing who lives there. So,
and you say that's the reason why there have been no arrests of perpetrators behind the killings.
Look, there is no map of the area, first of all. There are no addresses. Nobody knows who, the authorities do not know who lives where. It becomes a very fertile ground for people with criminal intentions to operate in.
Okay. Maybe I was speaking to Martin Creamer earlier on, and he was talking about the migrant labor system, how that people are saying surely by now we need to recognize, and government is doing something about changing the hostels, turning them into family units, but the employer itself, what responsibility has Lonmin taken? Dr. Du Toit mentioned earlier on that it seems that the promises it's made, it has not kept. But in your view, what role has the employer played in this?
I think that over the years, the country, South Africa as a whole, my personal experience is that it has been failed by the mining industry. I believe that the miners for far too long have really been treated worse than just mere objects. That post-apartheid in South Africa, things have changed, but not to the extent that the living conditions of the miners have been ameliorated to such an extent that it could have avoided something in the nature of Marikana as we saw last year. That on the surface intra-union rivalry really is a consequence of deep-seated social security related challenges. And I believe that the mining industry as a whole should be held accountable vis-a-vis their moral obligations towards their workforce. Because
I want to talk about that, Avi, because at that time it was highlighted that are unions doing enough? Are they really representing workers' rights? And my daughter spoke about it earlier on, this people being recruited, forced to join unions at the barrel of the gun. What is at the heart of that? Have unions lost sight of what their mandate is?
Look, in Lonmin, for an example, we know that Solidarity just the other day said they're no longer going to attend today's commemoration of Marikana because of the decision by Lonmin to recognize AMCU as the majority union, but going further to say minority trade unions are now no longer allowed to recruit on the basis that now AMCU is recognized as the majority union. At the end of the day, this is an old ploy, if you may, where ultimately decisions taken by the powerful employer impact so adversely on the miners and the unions that the miners themselves end up fighting and killing each other for decisions that, had they been taken differently, they would never have necessitated such physical confrontation among the workers themselves.
Dr. Du Toit, if you could just take the baton and continue with that, because you cited endemic corruption, enduring racism, high levels of violent crime for what you say is a debilitating political atmosphere or infighting that has led to also bad service delivery.
Yeah, look, I think that is absolutely true, and I just hope today that, as we focus on the commemoration, that the various parties heed the call of the Archbishop and do place the honor of these fallen mine workers above their own party interests. But let me also return to something that AB said just now. I think that the argument that's often made by the mining industry, why bigger and better wages are not possible, is competitiveness in the international market. But we're seeing now, for example, European energy companies coming together, drawing up a charter for coal mining to say we'll only deal with coal mines that adhere to the following human rights standards. Why can't the consumers of platinum, mainly the car companies, your Glitzy, Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen, Toyota, why can't these companies be pressurized to draw up a charter and say we will not deal with mines that don't adhere to the following standards? And that would, and because platinum is so concentrated in that belt around Rustenburg, so the cost should not only be carried by the mining companies, it should be passed on the chain towards the consumer as well.
I'm going to go to Advocate Mantula in just a moment, but I want to look at the issue of racism, especially within the mining sector. You say it's enduring. What are the reasons for that? I mean, one would think in democratic South Africa there should be some changes, especially structurally, to deal with some of those issues.
Well, prejudice dies a slow death, doesn't it? And sometimes it's just a mutating virus that we suffer from. So, we need to be very self-critical about whose lives count a lot and whose lives count less, who are the people underground that are exposed to the highest risks. Are we really as serious about a life lost by a mine worker than we are about somebody else's life? I mean, those are the enduring questions that I think society as a whole need to ask. But that makes it all the more shocking, the police brutality that we witnessed on that particular day 1 year ago. That it seemed that even the police did not take these lives very seriously. And I think we need to ask very, very serious questions about that.
0891-104-208. Join us in this conversation 1 year on. What has changed for those affected by the Marikana tragedy? We've got Advocate Mantula on the line, and you want to talk about human rights issues. A very good morning to you.
Good morning, Sepisa, and to your guests. Sepisa, I think looking at this day today, the families, the mine workers, everybody today, this day marks a memory lane. But Sepisa, when you talk about human rights law, remember 1 year ago, this was a day when the office of the state president opted that there had to be a commission to look at this catastrophe. But remember, Sepisa, again, 1993, we had a regulation of Garnered Act that was done by the former Judge Goldstone to look at the issues of political violence. And this, again, goes to the core of how the mine workers during a strike have to conduct their act. So these are the issues of human rights. And lastly, as you talk about racism, in the same province, you have a human rights commission that has to look in these issues of mine workers and even communities. So the issue of racism, the issue that Lucas is raising, that critical again, that goes to the local government, that why basic necessities and needs of those communities were never addressed. And even the issue of the chiefs, traditional leadership, that there were issues even around traditional leadership looking into the living conditions of mine workers. So it's a piece of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights is awaiting the report of this commission, because it came out strong and said we really need to look at South Africa in terms of its obligation under the international human rights law.
0891-104-208. Mashaule in Gauteng, a very good morning to you.
Morning, my sister. How are you doing?
Well, thanks. How are you, Mashaule?
It's very simple. We don't have to make a noise. After 20 years of democracy, I'm saying the government is responsible for the death of those people, and the mine bosses, they were supposed to build houses there for residential for those people are working there. But that benefited out of them. They were supposed to build schools and hospitals and clinics for those people. And then the government was supposed to make it a point that the mine workers comply to support. If you can look and investigate the condition of those people and their kids, I think some of their kids, they're not even going to school. Remember, those people, most of them are even less than 5,000. And the mine workers, mine bosses are rich than anybody else in the world. The government and the mine bosses are responsible for the death. Thank you.
Thanks, Mashaule. 0891-104-208 on SMS Pure Rights. To prove that the ANC, NUM and Lonmin are in the same bed with same sheet and floral pajamas, once NUM and ANC pulled out, Lonmin implemented a no work, no pay principle. Mike Newland says the interview with Pierre reflecting on Marikana highlights again the desperate need for a trained general, not a political appointee, says Mike. William Sibandi, without inviting some sangomas to secure peace and stability amongst the unions, nothing will be resolved. Jonas Moss says, where will the workers and communities have shares in mines? And this one says, remove the political hyenas and their fronts from the mines, give the communities and... Okay, it's not signed. It's not complete. Banegazi in Mthatha says, so this Marikana commemoration bickering is not the first where political parties jostle for supremacy. Sharpeville, June 16, Langa massacres, all painful reminders of the selfish politics we endure. No one even cares about financial reparations to the true victims of all the above massacres. Okay, we'll talk about that those similarities in just a moment, but maybe I want to ask this question. One of my observations of the Marikana tragedy has been, especially in some quarters, people really have moved away from discussing the role of the miners in the killings. If you recall the pictures that were portrayed in the media of the miners, some of them almost portraying them like barbarians with the spear against the tongue or whatever. But I want to look at the psyche of the miners. We're speaking about the conditions under which they lived. Could it have created a level of anger that has dehumanized them?
Poverty does that by its very intrinsic nature. Poverty is violent. Poverty is aggressive, is cruel. And poverty, when you can't deal with it successfully and turn it on its head and turn it around, it does tend to bring the worst out of those that it pins down to the ground of quicksand of hopelessness. And I believe that it's a human reaction to the cruelty and aggression of poverty. So when you see miners like in Marikana saying they want 12,000 rand, 12.5 a month, in this day and era, when you look at how much the mining companies are making from the sweat and blood of these miners who work long shifts, I really believe that these kind of tragedies are avoidable if those in positions of responsibility, particularly mine employers, do the right things. And I want to believe, and I really hope that out of the Marikana debacle, we would all move as a country collectively to a situation where never again will mining communities be in such a dire state of hopelessness, of poverty, whereas at the same time they are making billions of rands and even dollars for those who own these kind of mines. And I would want to see a situation where government, our government has got one of the best laws and legislations in the world, but if they are not enforced, they are just as good as the paper that they're written
on. Just to go back to the title of the book, Lucas, We Are Going to Kill Each Other. Are people in that community taking responsibility, personal responsibility for their involvement in the Marikana tragedy?
People in Marikana?
Yes.
Are they taking responsibility?
Personal responsibility, because we don't talk about this. The fact that there were 10 people who died prior to the 34 that were killed, and a lot of it were gruesome murders of miners against each other, at each other, including of 2 policemen.
Yeah, in the book we try to tell the stories of all those 10 people who were killed prior to the shootings on August 16. You will, by now, I'm sure you know that there were some arrests earlier this year of people who were suspected to have participated in those killings. But because the commission was already underway, there were objections raised that the arrest of people might impact on the work of the commission. The thing about this Marikana situation is that there is a lot of fear in that community. There is a lot of mistrust. There is a lot of secrecy. So I'm not sure that we can say people are taking responsibility. I covered the Marikana Commission of Inquiry quite extensively, and it was quite saddening to see that there were tensions between the families of the mine workers who were killed and the families of the police officers and the security guards that were killed allegedly by the miners. So that tells you that a lot of work still needs to be done. We need to start with interpersonal reconciliation. We need to start with making sure that that community receives attention. People get counseling. We need to, we can have ceremonies like the one they are having today. It's all good and well, but at the end of the day, when you look at it, it looks like political grandstanding.
Dr. Du Toit, I'm going to come back to you as well in just a moment, but I want to take Eddie's call. He's in Rustenburg, and he says that things are getting even worse. Eddie, good morning. Why do you say this?
Good morning. This commemoration today is not going to get the intended results of uniting the workers, highlighting the plight of the workers and the communities there, because it is heavily loaded with a group of anti-government individuals who've got no interest at all with the workers' issues, but more about driving their political goals. Now, let me give you an example. If you look at the whole thing, the strike now, as it appears that, what happened in August last year, it is clear that it was not more about workers' money. It was more about displacing a union that was seen to be aligned to government and bring another union that was seen not to be aligned to any political party, when that was not true, because for the facts, and I'm aware that every individual has got the right to join a political party, but Matunjwa is a member of UDM, and Mphahlele is a member of the Temagodi's political party. And you can see that even the lineup of politics has got nothing to do. Our appeal in Rustenburg, as I'm saying there, is that please, can we go back to basic and ensure that the workers and the community get the benefits? Because, and unfortunately, Bishop Soga is not there. I was going to ask him. He's appealing that people should have been joining this thing like NUM and Solidarity. Did he invite them personally, or was it AMCU which was given the center stage of inviting people? Because if it was AMCU, then it was wrong. They were supposed to be leading this invitation. Did they actually invite each and every stakeholder? That was my question. Supposed to be my question to him.
Thanks, Eddie. 0891 104 208. So it's all ill-conceived of AMCU and political opportunism by tiny political parties like the UDM and EFF to organize this commemoration of the Marikana tragedy. The wounds are still bleeding. The families and the country still have to get answers. The wounds need to heal before people can take these public platforms. Of course, they'll forget that fateful day from Hlengani, Siweya. In Rustenburg, Jonas Moss says, when will the workers and communities have shares in the mines? And Jay in NSP says, Nelspruit says, if this was a COSATU affiliate-dominated commemoration, you would have seen ministers and presidents coming to the event. Fiona says, how can we contribute to make lives better for the Marikana survivors? Can't we start a Reach for Dream program and do something for each and every victim's family? Mandla in Nelspruit says, my brother arrived 16 years ago in Babong. Brett's Eastern Platinum. He stays in a shack, no electricity, no water and toilets. On Twitter and our email address, DRDOC says, what's changed is the death of South Africa's mining industry and loss of future jobs and hunger for thousands of families. As Pio in KZN says, again, sad thing about this is that whilst Marikana miners remember that event, Cyril Ramaphosa's Lonmin implements a no work, no pay. Let's come back to you, Dr. Du Toit. One of the things that you said is that the Marikana incident has sort of reinforced this Afro-pessimism that exists. And I mentioned earlier on the barbarism. In fact, that's really how it was portrayed of the Marikana tragedy, the protests by the workers. And a lot has been said about investor confidence, but do investors themselves understand the uniqueness of South Africa and what they need to bring to the table?
Well, it's hard, I think, for investors to understand that if we struggle to understand ourselves so much and to this degree. I just think we should be very careful to be thought to portray the workers as somehow dehumanized and the community as so poor and disenfranchised that they've lost their humanity. I think that is the wrong way to look at this. I really think that the majority, the community claims the first shots were fired not by them, but by security guards on the premises. And the last shots we know were not fired by them. There was overwhelming force used against them. Yes, they armed themselves. Yes, that was unacceptable. Yes, these murders were gruesome and completely unacceptable. But to portray or project that onto a whole community, I think, is completely unacceptable. Those are people, and, I was a guest of the Socioeconomics Rights Institute doing fantastic work in that area this week and just saw that these are mostly dignified people, just like anybody else, who want, before they can reconcile, they want truth, they want justice done. Amnesty is not an option in this case, like the TRC. The justice needs to be done, and there needs to be reparation paid. And on those issues, they are quite firm. And when that happens, then reconciliation can follow, I think.
Lucas, I think I see you shaking your head there somewhat.
Well, I was just wondering whether Dr. Du Toit has done any, research into the community, because I think the issues that were raised by Mr. Makwe are quite genuine. So I think for him to say this labeling of people, or the way Mr. Makwe had articulated his point, was the wrong way to do it. I don't think we should be discussing whether it's the wrong way or the right way.
But is a point that Dr. Du Toit not making, I'm not sure if I hear you correctly, Dr. Du Toit, is that stripping people of dignity, the manner in which they're portrayed, that their struggle has somehow, according to how people project on them, being dehumanized them, and that these people are not dehumanized. These are people with dignity seeking some form of, solution to their problems.
Yes, and I'm not disagreeing with Mr. Makwe. I don't think that is what I'm saying. I'm simply saying we should be careful not to project these people as somehow dehumanized.
Okay.
I think it's quite clear they're not.
Okay, because I just want to wrap up, Lucas.
Yeah, the other issue that I was, the reason I was disagreeing with Dr. Du Toit was that people claim that the first shots were fired by the security guards. That is incorrect. I think the first shooting incident happened between members of rival unions on August 11. So the incident of the security guards happened on August the 12th.
And did that have any bearing of what happened on this day?
Before August 11, the strike was peaceful. There was a few cases of intimidation here and there. But that shooting incident on the 11th of August, which left 2 people seriously injured, changed the whole thing. People started arming themselves with dangerous weapons. They moved out of the hostel and went to gather at the Kopi, where 34 of them were eventually killed.
It's so unfortunate that we have to bring this to an end, because then so many questions are now arising. To wrap up, though, AB, restoration, justice, these are the words that people are repeating over and over again. And one of the listeners suggesting, can we set up some sort of fund? What should happen in aid of this?
I think between AMCU and the other unions there, and the employers, Lonmin, and the state, particularly the police, I think there have to be some kind of a convergence of actions which will speak louder than words. I would like to see the victims, particularly the minors, families being, as Dr. du Toit was saying, the Lonmin had promised that for those who had died, they'll bring in their families into the employment of the mines. I would like to see them keeping to their words, because in African families what a breadwinner does. They look after an average 6 other people. So I would like to see them being assisted in that way.
Thank you all. My guests, A.B. Magwe, SABC's political editor, Anglican Bishop Joe Sioka, and Dr. Fanie du Toit, Executive Director at the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation. And thanks as well to Lucas Lidwaba, author of the book We Are Going to Kill Each Other Today, the Marikana Story. Apologies to Vabakshini Chetty, who is about a minute and a half late with the news, now at 9 o'clock. From us, thanks for listening. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.